Welcome to the UK news on October 3rd, 2021. Today we start, of course, again with the fuel crisis. In the UK, Prime Minister Boris Johnson has assured the population of an adequate supply in the face of panic buying at petrol stations and supply bottlenecks. We want to make sure that we make all the necessary preparations to hold out until Christmas and beyond, not only in the supply of petrol stations, but in all supply chains, said the head of government this week. If necessary, the army should also help to bridge the bottlenecks in the fuel supply, and it's happening and supposed to happen from tomorrow. Great Britain is already struggling with rising gas prices, which are driving up energy costs and have led to a shortage of goods. The European Union is also concerned about gas costs. There were occasional scuffles because drivers were jostling for access to the petrol stations. Pictures were posted on the internet showing people pouring gasoline into old water bottles instead of reserve canisters. Transport Secretary Grant Shapps therefore called on the citizens to refrain from this, and he said this is dangerous, and for once he's right. Economy Minister Kwasi Kwarteng said soldiers could help out with the petrol deliveries. A limited number of military tank truck drivers had been put on standby and obviously are going out tomorrow, we will see. They should be used when needed for supply. Great Britain currently has significant bottlenecks there. It's not due to lack of petrol. In fact, sufficient amounts of fuel cannot be transported to the filling stations because tens of thousands of truck drivers are missing. Panic buying has recently made the situation even worse. The British Medical Association demanded preferential fuel access for health workers so that they can come to hospital and practices. And you probably have seen my other video with the taxi drivers and so on. Sometimes long queues formed in front of the remaining gas pumps, and the situation escalated in front of a petrol station in Welling in southeast London. A video on social media shows a man allegedly threatening a driver with a knife. An argument broke out between a man and a driver. In some parts of the country, up to 90% of the petrol stations were without fuel in the meantime, as the industry association PRA announced. The utilities announced an easing in the coming days. Demand will normalize at the usual level because many customers are oversupplied. But there is an estimated 100,000 shortage of truck drivers in the UK, and because of Brexit, many drivers have returned to the European continent. In addition to the corona restrictions, it meant that training came to a standstill. Economics Minister Kwarteng described the provision of army drivers as a temporary precaution. The UK economy is the fifth largest in the world, and in the middle of the recovery from the corona crisis, there are new setbacks. A sharp rise in natural gas prices is now causing problems for energy companies. In addition, the delivery bottlenecks mean that consumer goods are significantly more expensive before the Christmas business. Energy prices are also set to be a topic at the EU summit next month. The background to this is the rise in gas prices by, in some cases, over 300% this year. It's true that the energy supply is the responsibility of the individual member states. However, some states are calling for a coordinated approach by the EU, but they still already have something coordination, and this looks better there than in other places. Impact of Brexit is another topic. The consequences of the UK government's decision to press ahead with Brexit despite the COVID-19 pandemic were debated in the Scottish Parliament. Urgent changes to the immigration system are being proposed by the Scottish Government, which is calling on the UK Government to immediately introduce a new temporary worker route to address acute labour shortages. The failure to introduce such a scheme has led to challenges in recruiting for hospitality, in distribution, in social care, in construction, in food production, in agriculture, and in tourism, amongst other sectors though. The route was first proposed to prevent a post-Brexit cliff edge for employers who were reliant on free movement. The Scottish Government believes it should be implemented immediately, extended to 24 months, with the opportunity for workers to switch onto other visa routes once they are in the country and have employment. Ahead of the debate in the Scottish Parliament, Cabinet Secretary for External Affairs Angus Robertson said, "The UK government's policy of pursuing Brexit in the middle of a public health crisis is now damaging the recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic, a deplorable situation." As we outline in our motion, Scottish ministers warned the UK government repeatedly about the impact of recklessly pursuing a hard Brexit at the height of a global pandemic, of ending of freedom of movement, and the stark limitations of the current immigration system. We are now seeing that impact in the labour and supply shortages that have ensued. The negative consequences of Scotland leaving the EU are many, but installing a temporary worker route will alleviate some of the damage that was being done as we recover from the COVID-19 pandemic. In Parliament, we will contend that Scotland's future as a nation should not be compromised by a Brexit it did not vote for, and damaged by a Brexit deal the Scottish Parliament did not consent to. It should be decided by the people of Scotland. And now we go to a topic I called fines. From October 4th, so tomorrow, motorists exceeding the 50 miles per hour speed limits on some of the most polluted roads in Wales could receive a letter of fine through their doors, the Welsh government has warned. The decision to introduce environmental speed limits to improve air quality levels in 5 locations across Wales in 2018 was the first of its kind in the UK, demonstrating the Welsh government's commitment of putting the environment at the heart of everything it does. The schemes have already been successful in significantly lowering the levels of nitrogen dioxide in affected areas by up to 47%, helping to protect people from serious illness as well as playing a part in tackling the climate emergency. Air pollution is considered to be one of the largest environmental health risks of our generation. According to the World Health Organization, increasing our risk of heart and lung disease and contributing towards the worsening of pre-existing health conditions such as asthma. Deputy Minister for Climate Change in Wales, Lee Waters, who has a responsibility for transport, said about this, "We've made significant progress in bringing emissions levels down in recent years, but now we have to go further and faster. We know that slower speed limits are not a popular choice, but we need to do things differently and be bold if we are to stand a chance of tackling climate change. It is clear that the speed restrictions we've introduced on our most polluted roads are working. The results speak for themselves. But compliance with these limits is essential if we are to achieve the reductions we need to make in the shortest possible time. We need to act now to make Wales a safe place to live with clean air for everyone." South Wales Police Roads Policing Lead for Wales Assistant Chief Constable Marc commented on this. "The implementation of the 50 miles per hour speed limits for environmental reasons on some of Wales' busiest roads is an important issue to tackle pollution and to give Wales and its communities a cleaner and healthier future. All 4 Welsh forces are supporting its implementation, with the enforcement of these speed limits approached in a consistent, proportionate and transparent manner." And GoSafe Partnership Manager Teresa Ciano added, "Driving at the posted speed limit has benefits for safety, but it can also improve our lives in other ways. By supporting the Welsh Government's ambition to improve air quality for Wales, we know our roads will be safer too. By implementing a first-of-its-kind advisory letter program, we will be able to inform people of the importance of complying with the speed limit at these locations, while still prosecuting the most dangerous drivers." And talking about prosecuting, the next topic I called crime. Recorded crime in Scotland remains at one of the lowest levels in nearly 50 years, according to the latest annual statistics. Official figures show that the total number of crimes recorded by Police Scotland in the past year was 246,511, one of the lowest levels of recorded crime since 1974. Oh, my year of birth. Overall, that figure is down by 5 crimes from the previous year. However, taking into account the 20,976 crimes recorded under coronavirus-related legislation compared to just 107 towards the end of 2019-2020, other crime categories have collectively decreased by 8% in the past year. Between 2019-20 and 2020-21, recorded crime fell in 4 key areas. Non-sexual crime or violence decreased by 4%. This includes the recording of 1,641 crimes under the Domestic Abuse Scotland Act in 2018, and this is the second year the legislation has been in place. Then, sexual crimes decreased by 2%. Crimes of dishonesty decreased by 19%. That's the lowest level since 1971. And fire raising and vandalism decreased by 10%. The recording of these crimes is at the lowest level since 1975. The National Statistics recorded crime in Scotland 2020-2021 bulletin, which includes a new chapter on cybercrime, estimated that 14,130 cybercrimes were recorded by the police in Scotland in 2020-2021, almost double the 2019-2020 figure. Part of this increase may be due to the significant impact of the corona pandemic, including behavioral changes such as increased online shopping. Justice Secretary Keith Brown said about this, by all main measures, crime, including violent crime, is now considerably lower than it was a decade ago with fewer victims. These statistics show how crime in areas like vandalism and dishonesty, the sorts of crime that affects people's everyday lives, has fallen, with levels not seen since the 1970s. There's still work to be done, as the figures on cybercrime show, which is why we have this year published a prevention, awareness and enforcement strategy to make Scotland an inhospitable place for scammers. And while COVID-19 has no doubt had an impact on the figures, recorded crime was on a downward trend beforehand, and through the measures we recently announced in our programme for government, we will continue to make Scotland a safe place to live. It sets out how we intend to transform the way in which justice services are delivered, moving away from the use of custody for those who don't pose a risk of serious harm, while protecting the police resource budget in real terms for the entirety of the Parliament. Overall, these very positive trends are testimony, not just to the hard work of Police Scotland, but to the vital support the Scottish Government has put into place to enable officers to do their jobs effectively. The Scottish Government has invested over £23 million into violence prevention programmes since 2008, taking a public health approach, working with partners, individuals and communities across Scotland to tackle the underlying causes of violence through collaborative prevention and early intervention work, including our No Knives, Better Lives, Mentors in Violence Prevention and Hospital Navigator programs. Police officer numbers are favourable relative to elsewhere in the UK, with around 32 officers per 10,000 population in Scotland, compared to around 23 officers per 10,000 population in England and Wales. The Scottish Government has increased police funding year on year since 2016-17 and have invested more than £10 billion in policing since the creation of Police Scotland in 2013, with officer numbers significantly above the level inherited in 2007. Despite the constraints on Scotland's public services through a decade of UK austerity, our investment in policing this year increased by £60.5 million to more than £1.3 billion. with an additional 15 million specifically to mitigate the impact of COVID-19 on the policing budget. We also currently have a major number of officers than at any time during the previous administration, with an increase of 1,055 police officers since 2007. That was positive news, but at the end I have to bring something more sad. England, the mother country of soccer, yeah, you got it, no, football, has once again lost one of its 1966 world champion heroes. Just a few days after Jimmy Graves, Liverpool legend Roger Hunt also died on Monday evening after a long illness. The Reds announced that Hunt was 83 years old. The former striker made 6 of his 34 international matches at the World Cup in his own country and scored 3 of his 18 goals on the way to the title. In the final against Germany, he stormed alongside the triple goal scorer Geoff Hurst and was closest to the ball at the legendary Wembley goal. "I thought he was over the line," he said later. "Nobody was as important in the history of Liverpool FC as Roger, that much is clear," said team manager Jürgen Klopp. "This is really sad news," he said. Hunt won with Liverpool, where he played between 1958 and 1969, under the legendary team manager Bill Shankly, twice the English Championship and once the FA Cup. In 492 games for the Reds, Hunt scores 285 goals, a mark only surpassed by Ian Rush. Hunt's 244 league goals are a club record. And I'll see you in my next video. Bis gleich.